Hey everyone, and welcome back to another K6 Office Hours. I am Nicole van der Hoeven.
And I'm Simme, and today we have a very special guest with us. We have Odysseas from Netdata. Welcome, Odysseas.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. It's awesome to be in this live stream.
So, just as a starting point, I'd just like to know a little bit. Who are you? I mean, we've spoken a bit, but would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm pretty new to this whole DevRel cult. I think cult is a very good word for it. The more I discover it, so I started at Netdata about a year ago. It's like the first DevRel position, and it's been a very interesting journey thus far. Being on the go for so many different things. I came to understand that I love communities, which is interesting.
Because you're the only DevRel currently, right, at Netdata?
Yeah, but we're currently hiring aggressively because we are trying to give more focus on the community. It's not scalable with one person. There's also so many things you can do.
Don't talk to Simme. He's not interested.
We'll talk later about compensation.
So what kind of role did you have before going into developer relations?
I had a very thank you for the our HR will be very happy for it. I was in product for a bit in IoT. I think product and DevRel has a lot of similarities because in DevRel you create products, but for community users. I mean, even community office hours. In essence, it's a product where you manage it, the lifecycle, etc.
Yeah, and I also really think like that's one of the differences between DevRel and marketing is that I think it's kind of like if you were selling a hammer with DevRels, you're actually the person next to the people that might be consumers of your product using that hammer to build a house or do renovations. So I think that's a very big difference. We live by the products that we actually use, So we're not just being paid to say things. We actually do use it and very publicly.
Yeah. And I think that there's it makes it a bit harder because you can't distance yourself. So you can't work for something you don't believe in or you don't like, or you can't do it indefinitely.
So where are you based out of?
Athens, Greece, actually.
Okay.
Oh, great!
Yeah,
the home of the best food.
That's you can see. Yeah, it's telling. We have good food. I think it's one of the things that I think I will be most homesick if I ever choose. Where are you guys based?
So I live in the Netherlands right now, but I'm originally Filipino, and there are a lot of things I don't like about the Philippines, but the food is not one of them. I love the food. I miss the food very badly.
Netherlands, awesome.
Yeah, and I live in Sweden currently, but I'm also born in Sweden. So yeah, Sweden.
Sweden. That's too cold for me. Netherlands, it's the
it's okay.
What, you don't like polar bears?
The Philippines and Australia, so by comparison, this is cold. This is the coldest place I've ever lived.
Where?
Philippines, and then I was in San Francisco, near San Francisco in the States, and then also Melbourne, Australia. So all pretty warm places.
Yeah.
But so anyway, obviously we have just met, and we've just met live. Yeah. What drew you to Netdata? Netdata. Why did you decide to join them?
Well, Netdata, I think it has an interesting story. It's the product of anger-driven development, basically, because our founder Costa he couldn't find the monitoring solution for his needs in his previous company. He said, you know what? I will do it myself. And he spent like 2 years coding like a lot, and he released it in 2016, and it got viral. It got like 10,000 GitHub stars in a couple of weeks, because it addressed a pain, right? And I think that's a very interesting story to find the problem you have. It's user innovation. You have a problem and you solve it yourself. And it has a very interesting open source community. We have about 54,000 stars. Yeah, it's like it's Kubernetes. Then it's Elastic, another one, and then it's Netdata. Yeah, it's pretty.
Wow!
Awesome.
Congratulations! You're definitely doing something right.
yeah. It's by the users for the users, and that's baked into the product. So we take pride in it.
It's a really cool idea as well, or there definitely is a market for it. I mean, I come from doing ops and all sorts of things prior to joining K6, and one of the things that I really loathed was to set up, for instance, OP5 or Nagios and getting that to work and getting all the extensions I needed to work and things like that. And everything is written in Perl, so you tear your hair and you scream and curse. And then having something like Netdata that just works from a single command, that's actually really cool.
Yeah, actually, I found something that is harder to read than Perl.
Is it
what is it?
Can I? What kind of? If I chat here, it will show in the YouTube link.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If
So
you go to like the comment section, yes.
Yeah. Private chats comment section. Awesome. Yeah. So it's called. I can't. Yeah. It's
also,
called.
Simme is pretty good at like finding links. So if you mention something,
it's called
it'll just show
Urbit.
up a few seconds later.
It's called Urbit with you. Urbit.
Urbit.
Yeah, it's a whole VM decentralized whatever, and they have created their own language called Hoon, which is a functional language, and you code in insanity. That's the coding language. It's pure, not really. If you just find Hoon, and it's insane.
Okay, interesting.
You're not prepared. I don't know if you have played World of Warcraft before. If anyone.
Yes.
It's like what Ethan says. You are not prepared. It's
like just really quickly, what was the class of your main tune and spec?
Sorry?
For World of Warcraft. Did you play?
A Death Knight. A tank Death Knight.
Okay. I'm a discipline priest. I don't anymore because that's an addiction I don't need.
It's a second job, basically.
Yeah, that was the problem. So, like back to Netdata, I personally haven't used it. Could you talk a little bit more about what it does? Is it what makes it different from something like Grafana?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. Thank you. No, so it's basically is that we Grafana says that I will give you all the tools you need to create whatever you want, right? We say that with one command, you will run one command, and then the data will be installed, and it will auto-detect whatever it can. It will start gathering all the metrics it can. It will gather them every second, not every 60 seconds, but every second. And it will create automatically charts for you. And it will create automatically alarms for you, alerts based on some same defaults. So basically what we do is we package our own expertise into the product. So you don't have to create charts. You don't have to connect data source, whatever. The idea is that because you don't know what you need.
Yeah.
We give you everything we think you need.
So it's basically like the difference between buying a painting or buying a canvas and a set of colors to paint something yourself, right?
Yeah, I think a good comparison is like Apple, because it restrains you. You can't do everything you can do in a Linux machine, but everything works. It just works trademarked. So
that's something that is super attractive to me because I'm a tester. I don't really care about the implementation details. I just want it to work. I want to be able to monitor an application and see how it responds to changes to tests that I'm running. So that's very intriguing. And it's just a single command. Is that like a marketing thing, or is it for real
can I,
just a
can I share my
single
screen?
command?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
absolutely.
Sure, awesome. Okay, let me first close all the potentially discriminating tabs.
You use incognito tabs for those.
That's a pro streamer. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah. So no, I'm trying to clear my main screen. So I think we're go to go. How can I share it? Share screen. Don't show these tips again. Awesome.
There you go.
Awesome. So here, can you see this, or should I?
Yep.
Better. So this is a
Yes, we can.
machine. And an Ubuntu VM that I have for testing. It doesn't have anything installed. So if I want to install the data, I just go to the docs, get started. There's a lot of installation methods. The best is to just do this, like literally.
Nice. Would you be able to make your terminal bigger?
Sure. Is it better?
Yeah, I think so.
That's really good.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Yeah. So it just it downloads and builds the data on your system. At this moment we have done literally anything at all. And so an interesting thing is that the agent will be installed on, you will install it on every machine you want to monitor. And the thing is that the data are not stored, not centralized, but they are stored where they are gathered, right? So if you have 10 servers, you have 10 data agents, and each server has its own data. And the awesome part is that we have a cloud solution where if you want to monitor the entire infrastructure, you can go to the Netdata cloud, connect your agents, and then you can see the whole infrastructure in a single pane of glass as if it was centralized. But in reality, the data are streamed directly from every machine. So every Netdata agent, in essence, it's a distributed database. So it's easier to scale instead of using other solutions that centralize all the metrics into a data lake.
That's cool.
Interesting. Yeah.
And it's written in C, so it's every metric, every second, we live and die by it. We mean it. We believe that you don't know what metrics you will need when you troubleshoot, so you gather everything every second. And when you need them, you can start searching to find what you need, because we believe that you don't know necessarily a priori what you will need.
And I guess that also makes it a non-issue to, like, you don't have to worry about the performance of that central repository of all of your results or data either.
Yeah,
interesting
right.
approach.
Yeah. And it's written in C. So it's slower to develop, and it's harder for people to contribute to the core Netdata. That's true. But on the other hand, we can do crazy optimizations. So it's installed. You see this lovely graph. Now, if I go to the machine, which I don't remember. Oh, shit. So no, I don't remember the. So one thing is that, so as learning from the pros, and the other is, that I have to have to find the AP now of the machine.
If config should work, right?
Yeah, should it? I don't know. I,
Debian. Okay, then all bets are off. I guess IP show or something like that.
yeah. So you know what we will do? It's very easy. I will just put it here, and I will just open a new. Sorry for that. So cut.
That's okay. There's always a risk when you do something live, right?
Yeah. Awesome. So this is the machine, and if you go here,
Is it possible to zoom that window as well? Maybe
what you don't see it.
the text is very small.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is
Yeah,
it better
looks
now?
good.
Yeah, a lot
Yeah,
better.
it's better.
Thanks.
So now we see the system. It has already started gathering metrics every second. You see?
Nice.
And we have a lot of things. For example, we give you descriptions for the charts because we believe that it's not necessary to remember every single what it means. So we give you descriptions of what you see, so your engineers can easily understand what they're seeing and what they need. And currently we're gathering almost 2,000 metrics per second, and that's without doing anything at all.
Okay, so if I, for instance, were on a Windows Server OS and had Hyper-V installed, would it automatically pick up that and provide metrics for me then, or?
Yeah, it works on Unix machines.
Okay, but if I had Kubernetes, for
Mm.
instance, or Docker,
yeah, we have a Kubernetes. Actually, we have a very cool Kubernetes visualization. I don't have actually Kubernetes class right now, but I can send you a YouTube link to see it. And it's basically the same. You just install the Helm chart. With Helm chart, you just install it in your cluster. It installs Netdata agents on every node. It pipes data through Netdata Cloud to your browser.
I am actually going to try that after the stream because I really need a monitoring solution for my cluster at home. So that sounds really cool, actually.
Yeah, and
would you also be able to show metrics on a pod level?
Actually, yeah. Let me show you. Data learn.
I hope you don't feel pressured to show us these things too.
I think it's better
if there's something. Okay.
Yeah. So this is what you see basically. So yeah. So without having to set up anything at all.
That's nice.
You can.
Wow. Okay.
You can choose the dimension you want to group by per container or per pod, and of course you can do some filtering, etc. And and if you hover over that pod or container, it will show you metrics about the particular pod or metric or container.
All right.
Yeah. And it looks like that's even like a heat map based on the CPU utilization. Is that something that's customizable?
Yeah. So here we say color by. You can say average, sum. I don't remember the other functions. And you can change the dimension on which you group by. So here it's CPU limit. You can do other things.
That's really cool. I really like the philosophy of just being able to install it and you'll get the auto detection going, and you don't really have to worry too much about what to look at. That's really cool. Sorry for sidetracking you. You were showing the dashboard.
No worries.
We just got so excited,
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish actually I was prepared for Kubernetes. I didn't think about it.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. Here. Okay, here. So here, here it's a smaller Kubernetes cluster, and here as the user hovers over a specific container or pod, we have information context about that particular. For example, here is container, so cluster ID, node, controller kind, and some other information and metrics.
Cool.
Yeah. We're getting there. The important part is that we are trying to. Okay, we can't monitor on the application level all the things that exist at this moment. We are very good at monitoring a system, like the system itself. But the thing is, and you can't query the metrics. You can't, for example, you can't do your own queries to create your own charts. Okay, there are limits, of course, but through the limits, it liberates you in a way.
Yeah, for sure. If my primary concern isn't monitoring, but I still want to have monitoring in place, for instance, it's really good to be able to get same defaults out of the box and not having to, spend day after day setting up dashboards and making Prometheus and everything work.
Yeah. And it's
I
very
actually
performant.
think this is really good for testers who maybe just want to get something quick and dirty up and running really quickly. And even the fact that it's in C, in a way, I think many load testers cut their teeth on LoadRunner, which is scripts in LoadRunner written in C. So that's actually an interesting synergy there.
Yeah, there's a familiarity, and even for load testing, maybe it will be even more interesting. For now, we have eBPF, and eBPF is a very new technology. It's called Linux Superpowers, and basically, what eBPF is that you run a monitoring program inside Linux kernel itself. So we load eBPF programs inside the kernel, and we get metrics out of them, and this way we can view. Okay, of course, we're not the only ones to do it, but it's a very new technology, and we can see things. For example, we can see how many close or opens we had in the file system, and this way, for example, the programmer can see, do I have the same amount of open as close? If not, maybe my program is forgetting to close a couple of files, so I might have a problem. So we have a very fine-grained view of the system.
One thing that I'm really curious about, maybe you'll get there, but is there support for K6 in Netdata? Can we use it with K6?
Yeah, awesome. So thank you so if you want to do K6, no, this is my own. I think this is the correct one. So I have already installed K6 just to. So if I do K6 run test.js statsd, right? It will start running locally. Netdata is its statsd server. We have our own statsd implementation, and now you don't see anything. But as soon as you refresh, we have a new K6, and we can start immediately seeing results.
Nice.
That's actually insanely good. I mean, the time required to get started is almost none.
Yeah, it's 1
This
second.
like made for a noob like me.
Yeah, it
Okay,
was
so
very.
the only thing that you need for this is that you need to have the Netdata agent installed on the machine running the load test, then, I guess.
Yeah, and of course this charts is so what we do here is we send data statsd, and we have created a new configuration file called k6.conf. We can show it, and basically what we said to Netdata is that, okay, if you receive in statsd metrics that start with a k6 prefix, then distribute these metrics into these charts. And all this is modifiable. We have created the guide where we actually show how to create a new configuration file for K6 as a use case. So if, as a user, you don't like some of these, you want to different charts or whatever, it's very easy to modify.
And if you try this out and you don't really feel that the defaults are what you're looking for, feel free to blame me, because Odysseas has actually asked me what would be reasonable, and I've said that this would be reasonable for
Yeah.
load testing.
Yeah,
So
and this is a
blame
very
me.
good example of what we try to make. We try to package our own experience. So because I didn't have any experience in load testing, I asked you. And so we, in essence, what we did, we packaged your experience into the product.
Yeah, this is
Okay, that's really interesting. So you use StatsD to get the metrics there. Do you have any support for Prometheus as well
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
data source?
Yep. We have a Prometheus collector. At this moment, so in StatsD, we can do math. We can manipulate the data that as they come. So for example, if you're receiving kilobytes and you can show megabytes, you can do some simple yeah. In Prometheus at this moment is more you can't do a lot of you can gather metrics from a Prometheus and you can organize them in charts, but it's more restrictive than StatsD at this moment. But it's as easy as just going into the Prometheus configuration file. We have defined 20 different Prometheus exporters that we know exist. But of course, we can't know everything. For example, I wanted to monitor an Ethereum full node. We hadn't a definition in it. And you just add the URL of the exporter and you see the charts immediately.
Okay, wow, that's pretty cool. So what you're showing us is something running on the same network. How would it work if you had a load generator in the cloud or something?
So you have to point it. So since StatsD is passive, let's say you receive data, it's your responsibility to point it to the data. But if you're using our other collectors, we have created a plugin system where you can create your own collector in Python,
Okay.
Golang. So it's very easy to create your own collector and do whatever magic you want.
okay. So did I get it right that the requirement for being able to run, for instance, K6 in the cloud and send data to Netdata would be that you would have to have some kind of access to a StatsD server that has the agent installed, so you can point it towards
To the
that.
agent. The agent
Yeah.
is StatsD server, so you don't have to do anything
Okay.
other than that. And we ship. So I created the configuration file and we ship it by default. If a user wants to improve this configuration file with new same defaults, they can go to our GitHub and make a PR, and then their version will be included by default in the data. Yeah, I think that's a good way. It's a good idea to close Slack at this point.
Yes. Okay, so the approach would be you wouldn't install the Netdata agent in the load generator in the cloud, but you would use StatsD to send it to a server that does have the Netdata agent installed. Is that right?
It depends. I mean, from a Netdata agent perspective, we don't care. We just need the Netdata agent server somewhere that is reachable by the K6 load tester. If it's easier in the
Okay.
cloud, so be it. If it's easier locally, so be it. Whatever you want. Even for example, you can put it on the cloud, and here we access the local dashboard. This is open source project, so there is no cloud connections, but it's very easy to connect this agent to our cloud account and see the dashboard through the cloud account. So you can just put an agent headless behind firewalls, whatever, and don't access it directly, but go through the Netdata cloud because it's easier. Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, so maybe for cloud users then that use, for instance, K6 Cloud, they would use probably the Netdata cloud as well and have the data accessible through there instead then.
Yeah. it's probably easier. And on the cloud, we have some other, for example, we could do metric correlations. So, for example, I see here that actually I can show that. So what we would do here, we would underline this period because for some reason there is a spike here, and then the cloud you would tell me what other metrics that the agent has are correlated. So, for example, it would go to an Nginx collector, Nginx collector, and tells me at this point this Nginx server had a spike, and so you can start doing correlations if both the experiment and the agent runs on the same machine. Of course,
That's really cool.
Yeah. So it seems like it's pretty similar to K6's business model, that there's an open source tool but you also have a SaaS platform where you use that tool but add a little bit more smarts. Is that fair to say?
Yep. For example, the Kubernetes visualization we showed it's only for Netdata Cloud. It doesn't exist on the agent. So yeah, we have we are trying to follow like GitHub business model. So we are offering everything for free, and at some point we will add enterprise features, audit log and whatnot.
Makes sense.
I guess for
Go ahead.
K6 Cloud users, I was thinking that maybe it would be easiest to use the Prometheus read-write integration that we were just talking about last week, actually, with Mustafa. And that way, it's just something in the script that they would have to change, since Netdata already reads Prometheus.
And we can export Prometheus as well. So if your stack has Prometheus, sure, if you like do the troubleshooting, the Netdata is easier, and you can export with less resolution, let's say 1 metric every minute, to your Prometheus long-term storage. We want to play nice with others.
Makes sense.
Yeah, we always try to do that at K6 too.
We are open source citizens. I think why I chose K6 for my stats. The use case was like, first of all, I really loved the platform. It was super easy. I learned load testing as I was playing with K6. But it's also, we are good open source citizens. I think that's important to showcase that there is a way to have open source and have a lucrative business at the same time.
Definitely. But I think a lot of companies are starting to catch on that as well. But it's definitely a good way forward, I think, because I mean, development teams, they don't really have maybe the time or the stamina or the interest to pursue procuring a tool through their procurement department, and going through all of these long processes that you need to do to be able to choose a new tool for whatever you need to do. Instead, you want to be able to spin something up quickly. You want to be able to evaluate it, and then as your need grows, you'll be able to add commercial features on top of it to make it easier for you to use. So
exactly,
it definitely resonates with me, or otherwise I would probably not be here. But if we have any users in the chat or watching this stream that have actually used K6 together with Netdata in some constellation, feel free to reach out either in the chat now, or if you're watching the recording later, then you can reach out on Slack or on email to us, because that would be really cool to see an actual user of this integration, because I would assume that there are many out there given the popularity of Netdata and K6.
Yeah, it would be awesome, and we can build on the integration. We love contributions, and we can help you to make the tools work better. I'm sure there's ways to improve. So
we actually got a comment from
go on.
Naveen Kumar, which is he's a really experienced and talented performance tester who's been working with a lot of different tools, and he signed up for Netdata, so hopefully he'll be
Awesome.
able to
Thanks.
provide us some kind of feedback as he's tried it out. Once
Awesome.
he's tried it out.
So can you tell us a bit more about EBF? I'm not eBPF. Sorry,
Sure.
I'm obviously not very familiar with it. What was the old way and how is this way better?
Okay. I like to show things. That's my thing.
Sure,
So
sure.
let me, yeah, there are a lot of people. I like to create diagrams. That's my thing. So, yeah, I like yeah. So this is a by there's a community now around the BPF that has been starting to form. It was introduced. So initially we have BPF, and what BPF was just a way to create packet filtering inside the kernel. So why do the packet filtering up? You can do it more efficiently in the kernel, but it was very restricted. It was a very easy, simple VM. And then eBPF came along, and a couple of people said, okay, why not create a generalized VM where you can basically you can write your eBPF program, verify that it is secure, it doesn't have an infinite loop, for example, and then you load it into the kernel itself. And this eBPF program, it's basically like JavaScript. What JavaScript did to HTML, eBPF does for the kernel. So in the eBPF program, you say when that happens, for example, a specific syscall, run this eBPF. You attach the program on an event in the kernel. And why I said like JavaScript and then HTML? Because HTML is static. With JavaScript, you say if the user clicks on the button, open the card. With eBPF, we say the kernel is static. You can't change it. It's hard. But with eBPF programs, if this happens, do that inside the kernel. And it has a lot of use case. For example, routing, as I said, it's why do packet filtering or packet routing on the IP level or whatever if you can do it on the TCP level. We do it for monitoring. So we can see whenever a specific, like virtual file system, whenever a file is open, we want to know. So we can say afterwards, did you have the same number of opens and close? And this is how we so with Netdata, what we do, we are this process. Though when Netdata starts, it will take a BPF programs that we have run, it will load them inside the kernel, and at specific events, they will run. And we will gather data at the very specific TCP, UDP level. We plan this way. You can do advanced network viewers. You can do all sorts of magic with that.
Is this available in all Linux distributions or?
Thank you. That's a good question. So no, you have to have. There is I think pretty much all new kernels will have it. So you have to verify if your kernel is supported, but most of the new distributions have. And it's very easy to write your own eBPF programs, actually. You can even do it with some Python and a pseudo C.
Okay, so once you have the eBPF support built into your kernel, then you don't have to recompile your kernel every time you want to change your eBPF programs. Is that correct?
Yeah, awesome. Yes, because it runs inside the VM. So, and basically what people have done, I read it was awesome, is that they find the bug, and because the whole process to submit the bug and get it fixed is so slow, they submit it, but in the meantime, they fix it by creating an eBPF program that fixes it.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's the difference with kernel modules is that with kernel module, it might break with every new kernel.
Yeah.
But in eBPF, it will work because it runs in the same VM inside the kernel.
Yeah, been down the rabbit hole of compiling my own kernel too many times. I don't want to do that anymore. So if it's just provided to me, then that's a big advantage, definitely.
Yeah.
So are there also any performance benefits, or is it just that there's more that's exposed?
Depending on the use case. For example, I found there's a routing a routing program written in eBPF that is much more efficient than doing the routing in. I remember it was like 7 megabyte of RAM versus 90 megabytes of RAM.
Yeah, that's a significant difference.
Yeah.
Because you do it in kernel. With monitoring, it's not that about performance; it's about granularity, viewing exactly the kernel functions that are being called.
Wow, this is also exciting. I really need to read up on eBPF and Netdata.
Me too.
Apparently, it somehow managed to pass under my radar, even though I'm really interested in in all of the topics that we're discussing.
Let me send
Which table?
a very good starting point for eBPF. It's by Brendan Gregg, which is like a demigod in the monitoring world. Here for the viewers, it's a great place to get like what it is, what's important, why do we care, how to test it yourself in 5 minutes.
We also have James Leatherman agreeing that he also needs to read up on this. At least feel better that I'm not the only one that has never heard of this. It sounds really cool. Would you be able to show us the configuration that you needed for K6?
Sure.
To be able to get the metrics into Netdata? Because this is something I definitely want to try out.
Sure. Let me first try something. Yeah.
But that's the case, though, right? You don't need to do any configuration at all. You just need to install the agent and run a K6 test with statsd as out.
Yeah.
Or did I? But it's
so.
Sorry.
So for statsd at this moment, the only application that we offer is K6. So if you create, you have another statsd application, we don't have a configuration file for it, so you have to create your own. But the general philosophy is that whatever you see that we support, and it's over 200 integrations, for most of them, there are charts and alerts already defined.
And if you write your own Netdata configuration for statsd, or statsd configuration for Netdata rather, where would you suggest that people go if they want to share that with the community? Where would be a good place to go then?
So basically, is in the GitHub in our GitHub. So just make a PR.
In Netdata,
yeah,
the main repo. Okay.
In the main repo, there you can find in the Netdata collectors statsd. Inside, you will find the K6 configuration file. Place it in the same folder. And okay, I can show you now. So share screen. Awesome. So in my very, 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 very big terminal, it's like so what we do is we go into where we save all the configuration files for Netdata in etc Netdata. And Netdata, it's how we go about it is that we run a program with sudo named edit config. And what it does basically is when we choose a configuration file to edit, it will search for the user definition. If it doesn't find a configuration file by the user, it will bring out the stock configuration file so the user can edit it, and then it will save it as a user. Yes. So so here we don't statsd.d k6.conf, and that's not the correct. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Okay. So here's the configuration file. We define a new app. That's how we It's that's the definition. We say it's the K6. We say what metrics do you want to have in this application. So then it will filter. We have a very simple inside. We use a very simple syntax to do filtering. Basically, we have the asterisk as a wildcard and the exclamation mark as not, and that's about it basically. So if we say here, I say that whatever starts with K6, it's fair game. Simple as that. Private charts is a definition that says that by default, when you're developing the integration, you want to see a chart per metric, so you can view all the metrics that you have at your disposal, so you can start grouping them. And that's a very good point. The most difficult part for us, the data developers and users, it's not getting the metrics. It's understanding how am I supposed to organize these metrics into meaningful charts. So that's where the user should focus, like, how should I organize it? Does it make sense? Does it make sense to have, for example, in the virtual users, to have 2 dimensions where there's the virtual users and virtual users max? Does it make sense to have them in the same charts? Do I need it? But the syntax is very easy. I'm going to say that for this chart, name it FUS, give a human title, family. It's not important at this. It's about grouping. It's not important on this use case. And then let's say what is the metric. The name metric. That's the name of the metric as it comes by K6. How I want to name it. What is the value that I want? Here I say that I want the last value. I don't want an average or something. Multiplier, divider, and that's about it.
Okay.
Okay, so if somebody wants to just use what you've already made, they don't actually need to go into this detail.
No.
Is that right? Okay,
Yeah.
so you'd only go into this if you want to change the views, or maybe because with K6 you can also create your own metrics. Maybe then you would want to add that in.
Yeah, for example, if you had, for example, so this is a very good example. So if, for example, I had this custom metric from K6, it would probably show up as K6 custom metric. I don't know how it's, that depends on how K6 sends it. And that's why I said it's important to have the private metrics, because if you activate the private charts and you have one chart per metric, you can see exactly what you're dealing with.
I see you've even managed to get HTTP rex failed in, and that's a really new feature. So that's really awesome to see.
Yeah, it was actually for me. It was very, because I didn't have this domain expertise. It was very challenging to be able to get into the shoes of a load tester and say, okay, what I care about.
But okay, so for instance, for the VUs, would I be able to say, okay, I don't want it to be a line diagram. I want to show a gauge instead, for instance, and just change from line to gauge, and it would show like that?
The answer is no. The gauge is not supported. It's not supported here as StatsD. I think we would need to do more advanced customization in the dashboard, which is possible, but it's one of the features that it's very old. And we are slowly moving away from having to deal with JavaScript. We're trying to abstract everything.
Okay,
for the
so
user.
if I wanted to choose another visualization type, what could I choose in this case?
I think we have only line. We have stacked.
Okay.
And we
that's
have
really good as well.
The area.
Okay, so I would be able to do a stacked and, for instance, have successful requests and failed requests
Here, yes.
stack in the same. Okay. That's
Yeah, for
really
example,
cool.
here I have stacked. So This is the total duration as defined by
Yeah,
K3.
that's a really good use for it too.
Mm.
Because like HTTP rec duration is made up of several different metrics, so you might want to see them individually, but I think mainly you just want to see it all together. It's kind
Yeah,
of great use for stacked.
Mm.
let's see it. Let's see it. Let's so 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 I think this is it. So if we go back to the
Yeah, that's really good.
and here, let's zoom in. So you can see that we can zoom in by the second.
Mm.
This is literally every second. So you see here different metric every second. That's very new in this industry. For some reason, most of the other solutions are 15 seconds or 60 seconds. But the problem is that if you have a problem that shows up every 5 seconds
Yeah.
and it shows up for 2 seconds, it's invisible.
Yes. Yeah, this is why, yes, I can't agree with you more. Like having granularity can be such a big thing. It's, I think the reason that a lot of solutions don't have it is that it's because of the storage costs. I think
Exactly.
it, to save all of those data points, that costs a lot. And also, it's not with load testing, we generate lots of data points, right? So that's kind of the point, that we're trying to simulate all of these users. But then there's the problem of like rolling them up. Like maybe it's not so useful to have raw or 1 second metrics for something that happened, 5 years ago, right?
Right.
Maybe that's not as big a deal. I
Yeah.
love that. Sorry, I went off on a tangent there, but I love that. that you
Yeah.
can see it at 1 second intervals.
Yeah. That's, currently Netdata is like the best troubleshooting monitoring tool, hands on. We are working towards creating a more general observability platform. For example, now Netdata stores, it's best to store Netdata with short to medium, so a couple of weeks or months. The database is optimized for that particular, for speed and efficiency, for that time. Afterwards, for example, if you want like 1 year or whatever, it's best to use the exporter to export them into a database, a time series database that it's and for the data points you said, because if it's real, right? If you had 100 machines and they produced one data point every second into one location, that's crazy. And that's why we are having this distributed architecture which works. And you don't need data in one place. You need data to view them in one place. As a user, you don't care where the data lives.
I'm
And that's
wondering though,
a lot
does
of
that have
complexity.
any impact on the performance though, to read the data in real time over network connections? Have you
Yeah,
seen any?
that's true.
Good point.
That's true. When you view the data and they're being streamed by a Netdata agent to your dashboard, that's taxing on the CPU. It's true, but that's taxing only when you view them.
Yeah, that's true, and it also
Mm.
even the tax is distributed across your nodes as well, right? So it's not that big of a deal as compared to if it were streaming from one machine to another, a huge amount of
Yes.
data, I guess.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yep. Yeah. For
So
example,
Ian,
a very good way to
go
see
on.
it. I have this diagram. Is it viewable?
Um,
Could you make it a bit bigger?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
just to
that's definitely yeah.
yeah, that's for a conference. So we basically the data lives locally, and only when you view them, they are being streamed directly through the data cloud. So they pass through. They are not stored on the cloud. They just pass, and you see them in a single view. And of course, okay, some metadata are being set to the data cloud, alerts. So the data cloud can organize your agents into spaces and worms and groupings that make sense and makes your life easier to collaborate with others.
Earlier, you mentioned using this for an Ethereum node. Have you
Yep.
actually been, have you seen that application for some sort of blockchain?
We spotted, actually, that's so we spotted in the wild the dashboard for a blockchain. So a user had created the Python collector that gathered the metrics from a blockchain node and produced a dashboard. And they used it because it was very easy to visualize data. So they created a simple Python program and they could instantly see beautiful graphs. That's why they used it.
Do you remember offhand which blockchain it was?
No, my mind is racing as I spoke to you.
It's
My 50% was racing through.
No, it's okay. We can't expect you to remember everything. But I just think that that's another interesting area that testing is growing into as things get more and more distributed. I think that decentralized blockchains are a logical effect of this race to distributed everything. And it's very much there are so many areas where I feel like we don't really know yet how exactly what are the best practices for testing something like a blockchain or for monitoring. Like, what do you even monitor? In the same way that Kubernetes brought with it some different things that maybe were not considerations in older architectures. The blockchain is so completely new and interesting, and it's good to know that Netdata can also monitor that.
Do you have use cases in blockchain and K6? I would be very much interested into that. Have you seen users using it for dashboards for blockchain or full nodes or whatever?
I've heard of it, but I don't think we have any tangible use case right now. But I'll definitely keep an eye out, or we'll keep an eye out, and if we find anything, we'll definitely let you know, because that would be really interesting to see whether we can do something together on that to aid in that.
Yeah. Blockchain is eating the world, so we have to play ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just as money too, but like I think it's just a different technology that many applications will run on. I mean, Ethereum is a great example of that.
Yeah.
How do you test a smart contract? What things do you even have to monitor when you're when you're load testing a smart contract?
Yeah, or load testing the application that is responsible for communicating with the blockchain, and for some reason under stress, for example, it's a Uniswap. If the user can't access the Uniswap interface, they have literally monetary implications. It's like they're literally losing money.
How do you monitor, for instance, that you're not only getting crappy kittens when you're doing CryptoKitties?
Right.
I mean, that would be really difficult because, in my experience, that's all I've ever gotten with CryptoKittens.
There is a game
I
called
have succeeded.
And you eat CryptoKitties.
Oh, wow. I was just going to say, I have succeeded in getting 2 CryptoKittens that are worth okay, and then I breed them and they're worth less. That's that's how good I am at that game.
Story of my life.
Okay.
But is there a limit? Is there a limit for Netdata for like requests per second that it can, or maybe different nodes or different data sources? Is there some sort of limit that you've found as a result of this distributed monitoring system?
Actually, no. So the dashboard, of course, there are limits. So we give a specific number of threads to the dashboard, so you don't get denial of service or something. But we have found it to be very performant. For example, I was running Netdata on a Raspberry Pi Zero, the $5 computer, and it was consuming 10% of the CPU.
Wow.
So
that's
it's
impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, it feels like time is flying by when you talk about interesting topics. We've already been live for an hour, so we'd definitely like to have you back at some point to continue the discussion around this, because it's definitely an interesting topic. Do you have anything that you would like to share as some kind of parting words, or anything you'd like to plug?
We'll be having our own community call hopefully soon, so stay tuned. I would love to have you as guests. Maybe we can talk about it more. But it was a great experience. You're great hosts, folks. I mean it. So yeah, kudos to that.
It's been really nice to have you on. Before we
Ευχαριστώ.
end the stream,
Oh.
I'd just like to point out that we are also hiring. So go to k6io/jobs and have a look if you find something that might pique your interest. And let us know.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you, everybody, and have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.